Good afternoon. I will be discussing Manuel Noriega. And depending upon your age and your love of world and American history, you may or may not be familiar with him. Manuel Noriega was born in 1934 in Panama City, Panama. He was adopted at age 5. He did go to college. He attended the Peruvian Military Academy, where he graduated with a degree in engineering. After graduating with that degree, he did return back to Panama and became a sub-lieutenant in the National Guard there, and he was stationed in Colon, Panama, which is near the Panama Canal. 1971 and 1975, between those years, that's where you saw Manuel Noriega's career as a military leader really blossom. He was able to help the Nixon administration in extracting 2 American firefighters that were imprisoned by Fidel Castro and have them extradited back to the United States. During that time, though, he also was known for his drug trafficking activities. He used the Panama Canal as a resource to get drugs, specifically heroin, out of the country and to the United States and other countries in the region. During the Nixon administration, he was advised by a high-ranking DEA agent to have Manuel Noriega assassinated. However, Richard Nixon decided against it at the time, considering his intelligence that he was able to provide the United States, and also the fact that he was the second most powerful man in Panama. They decided against having him assassinated. Between 1985 and 1989, due to an article that was published by a reporter, this is where we see Manuel Noriega's illegal activities really come out. He was exposed from all of his drug trafficking activities, his murder so that he was committing in Panama, and also it was known that a U.S. Army sergeant had released information to Manuel Noriega, classified information, which he then in turn gave to the Cuban government. He also, during the Reagan administration, had aided them, the Nicaraguans, during the conflict between the United States and Nicaragua, guns to help fight the American government at the time. He also received guns from Cuba, which he then sold to other countries like El Salvador. He was very involved in the Panamanian government, obviously. He restructured the military to where he was the sole person in power over the Army, the Navy, and Air Force, and military police. He also was very involved in the presidents. He made sure that the person that was in charge was under his rule. And in 1988, there was negotiation between the Panamanian people that were unsatisfied with Manuel Noriega's activities to have him ousted prior to the Bush-Dukakis election. However, that did not work. He sustained that coup and still was in power as their political dictator there. President Bush became elected president that year, and in fear of the Panama Canal safety, which was United States property at the time, not property of the Panamanian government, decided to launch a full-scale attack against Manuel Noriega, invaded the country of Panama on December 20th, 1989. He sent 24,000 troops there. President Bush held strong for 4 days. Manuel Noriega fled to the Vatican embassy and was able to have him surrender after those 4 days on January 3rd, 1990. He was sent back to the United States, extradited there, and to Miami to serve trial, which he did get convicted of cocaine trafficking, money laundering, and racketeering. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison and ordered to pay $44 million in restitution to the Panamanian government. In 2010, he was extradited to France to serve charges, to go for charges of money laundering there for over $2 million that he money laundered through banks in France. He was then convicted as well, served 7 years in order to pay restitution back to their country. In 2011, under authorization of the French government, he was extradited back to Panama to serve the rest of his sentence, and also to stand trial there for 2 murders, specifically one of a political leader that he had murdered during his time in Panama. He is the oldest living prisoner in the Panamanian prison at the age, he's over 80 years old now. because he is the government there in Panama does have a leeway for prisoners over the age of 70 to where he can be released under house arrest. However, they have denied his attorneys that request several times. So he will continue to stay in prison until the day that he dies.